All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to the PAT podcast. Today we're going to be going over some things that have developed throughout the year. We're going to touch on the Cowboys and what they need to do in the upcoming weeks. We're also going to put to bed this Brock Purdy, is he elite conversation, as well as we're going to rank the top 5 running backs in the year so far. Might throw a couple honorable mentions in there. So without further ado, like and subscribe, comment down below what you feel, agree or disagree. Let's have a conversation. So no more nonsense. Let's jump on in. I'm going to start with Brock Purdy. This isn't going to be the longest of tangents, but the big question coming into the year was, could Brock Purdy do it without his weapons? He's a system quarterback. You know, he's got Debo, he's got Kittle, he's got CMC, he's got Ayuk, he got Trent Williams blocking for him, and he's got Shanahan calling the plays. This take never really made any sense to me because we've seen a handful of quarterbacks. Granted, they had some success in Shanahan's system, but they never had the level of success that Brock Purdy is having and has had over his 2+ some years in the NFL. It'd be one thing if he was just dishing the ball out at the line of scrimmage and these guys were picking up, all the yardage that he's gaining, and it's obviously all underneath. It's very easy for him. But when you watch Brock Purdy, this guy pushes the ball down the field better than most QBs that we think of as top 5 guys. Last year, he led the league in average depth of target at almost 10 yards per attempt. That's a good stat line if that's your yards per attempt, not your average depth per target. So he's obviously comfortable pushing the ball down the field, but he's doing it accurately. The reason this offense is so successful is because he's hitting these guys in stride, and they're able to pick up so much after the catch, which is their strength. George Kittle, beast after the catch. Debo Samuel has made his whole career running after the catch. And obviously Christian McCaffrey, you just give him the ball in space, he's going to get yards. So going into this week, this was an opportunity for Brock Purdy to silence the haters. He's going in without Debo. He's going in without Kittle and without Christian McCaffrey. Ayuk and him still haven't gotten on the same page. So his main target was going to be Juwan Jennings and Ronnie Bell, who couldn't catch a cold in the winter. And it was a really great opportunity for him to shut everybody up. And he did just that. He went 22 for 29. Almost 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, added another 41 on the ground. But that stat line, while good, isn't the best part about this. The San Francisco 49ers receiving corps dropped 7 passes on Sunday against the Rams. Brock Purdy went 22 for 30 for almost 300 yards. So if those guys caught those 7 passes, Brock Purdy would have gone 29 for 30, probably over 350, and you'd imagine another touchdown, at least. Not to mention that Juwan Jennings did most of the heavy lifting. Brandon Ayuk barely eclipsed 50 yards. And he threw a strike to Ronnie Bell, who I before mentioned, in the fourth quarter with a minute and a half left to put them in field goal range to win the game. And he dropped it, hit him right in the hands. Looked like he was swatting the ball down. So I think this needs to put to rest all the shit talk that goes on. Well, Purdy he's a system guy, and he's only doing it because he's got the weapons. We saw this guy in his rookie year, at the later part of the season, 7th round pick, the last pick face off against Tom Brady in his first NFL career start, and he outplayed him by a lot. And then he led the Niners to the NFC Championship game, where they probably would have won if he didn't get his elbow ripped in half by Hassan Reddick. Next year, he leads the Niners to a Super Bowl while putting up all-pro type numbers. There was a conversation for a while, is Birdie going to win the MVP? And it kind of died the night they played the Ravens, because Lamar shined, and that Ravens defense worked the Niners like they worked everybody else that year. But Purdy still got them to the Super Bowl. It was not the reason they didn't win the game. He was pretty damn good, and for a while was outplaying Mahomes. Came out slinging it, was not afraid. So I think this Brock Purdy is not even a top 10 quarterback talk, is absolute ignorance, and you clearly don't watch football and don't have an idea of what good football play is. Because if you factor in every game that he started, if you just accumulated the play of all the quarterbacks from Purdy's first start, he's got to be one of the top 5 guys. I mean, obviously Mahomes, obviously Allen, obviously Lamar. You could argue, well, Burrow and Herbert, they're very good, but I mean, have they had video game-like numbers over the past couple years? Physically, they're more gifted, sure. But you could be as physically gifted as Jamarcus Russell. Doesn't mean you're going to be a good NFL quarterback. And Purdy's done just that. That guy could play on my team any day of the week, and that's why he's going to get a big extension. And I'm curious to see what his take is going into the offseason. If he has another great year, if he's going to cash in on that massive paycheck that these quarterbacks are getting, and if the Niners do it. It's going to be really fascinating to watch it all play out. This is the Niners' year, though. You're kind of at the top of the mountain. You could kind of say you're sliding back down. So they got to get it done this year because they're going to have to pay Purdy, and he's earned it. He's earned every dollar of this $50 million per year contract that he's probably going to get in the offseason. And good for him. It's a great story. Moving on, I want to give a quick shout out to Mike Tomlin. I mean, this guy, and I was kind of up in the air about him in the offseason. Not if he's a good coach or not. He obviously is a damn good coach. But we've just seen over the past few years that they're a little bit stagnant. And it all has to do with the offense. They whiffed on Kenny Pickett as hard as the Patriots whiffed on Mac Jones. And in the later years of Ben Roethlisberger's career, their offense was pretty putrid. The defense has always been a freaking stud unit. I mean, they developed talent on the defensive side of the ball. Them and the Ravens, the best in the league, probably the best of all time. But you wondered at a certain point, an organization like the Steelers, he's only their 3rd head coach of all time, which is insane. That is a record that will never be broken. Over 60 years of NFL play, the Steelers have only had 3 head coaches. That's an average of 20 years per coach. The Browns have had 20 coaches in just this decade, it seems like. And they're in the same division, ironically. You wondered at some point if the stagnant play that they were putting out was ever going to have them move on. And it didn't feel like he was coaching for his job, but it felt like there had to be some sort of line in the sand moment with this team this year. Because, yes, they've made the playoffs, but nobody took them as a serious contender. They got in the playoffs due to just unbelievable defensive play, which still wins championships, but you need a good offense too. And they just haven't been hitting on it. Even though they've been making the playoffs, they've been a tough watch over the past few years. Steelers fans will tell you that. So coming into this year, you're like, is Mike Tomlin in the last year of his contract, in the last year of coaching the Pittsburgh Steelers? Like, one, what would they do? Two, he would get picked up immediately. I mean, this guy is a damn good head coach. Sometimes you need new scenery. We saw Andy Reid, great coach for the Eagles. Last year, 4-12, moves on to the Chiefs. 3 Super Bowls later, the rest is history. I think we're going to see it again with Bill Belichick. Sometimes you just need a fresh start. But after starting 3-0 with Justin Fields, who has, give the guy credit, has looked decent. He's not a world beater, but they're 3-0, and he has been a reason why they've won these games. He's made smart plays and small critical plays when they've needed him to, and that's a tribute to the coaching. That's a tribute to the veterans in that locker room, and it's obviously the main tribute to Mike Tomlin. He's got this defense. This team knows their identity probably better than any team in the league. They know they're a defensive team. The Chargers going into this game, Jim Harbaugh, this is the new physical brand of football the Chargers are bringing out. They're going to rough you up. They're going to win muddy. The Chargers went into this game 2-0 against the Steelers, and the Steelers said, oh, that's cute. You've been doing this for 2 games. Well, we've been doing it for 10 years. And 10 years before that. And 10 years before that. Chargers came out of that game with their first loss of the season. Both their tackles hurt. Justin Herbert on the injury list, and Joey Bosa questionable for the next game as well. It's like their 4 best players got banged up against this team. We all know the Niners to be this physical team. I think we got to start putting some respect on the Pittsburgh Steelers name. My goodness, they can play. It'll be curious. I'm excited to see how the rest of this season goes. Because at some point, Justin Fields is going to be asked to win a game. He's not going to be down by 2 touchdowns. He's not going to be down by 10 points, probably at any point in the game. But he is going to be asked, hey, we're down 3 or we're down 4. We need you to go bring us in field goal range or go get a touchdown. 1.5 minutes left. Can he do it? I hope so. He looks good in that uniform. So shout out Mike Tomlin. I think even after this start, it's looking like they're never going to get rid of him, which they shouldn't. He's been damn good. And if he keeps up this, you can bank it. Coach of the year, him or O'Connell. If things continue to play out as they are, how could you not? Next up, we got the Seattle Seahawks, another 3-0 team. Surprise, surprise. I'm curious, though. How sustainable is the success they're having? They start off the season, and they beat up a Broncos team. Bo Nix, first career start, looked over his head. Mike McDonald, they're playing with energy. 12th man, very loud. 1-0. Next week, they go up against the feisty Patriots team, who played them for 60 minutes plus 5, and they earned that win, for sure. But let's not act like the Broncos and Patriots were world beaters coming into the season. They both were not projected to make the playoffs. The Patriots, a lot of people had them as the first overall pick next year. And then last week they beat the Tua-less Dolphins, which is a bummer because this game had the potential to be the Hawk Tua game. That would have been just super funny. Kind of a bummer, but Tua, get healthy. That's the most important part. Not that you got a concussion the week before. We got to live that out. I digress. I just don't know how real this team is because you have tremendous talent at every level of your field. Kenneth Walker hasn't really played much this year. Your weakest part of your team is probably your offensive line, which still has some pretty young, developable guys on it. Obviously, your quarterback is a veteran, but a savvy one, and has earned his paychecks. But you haven't beaten anybody. Broncos, Patriots, a QB-less Dolphins team, which we've shown couldn't win a big game if it was against a high school team. Now you go and you play Detroit on Monday night. The whole world's going to be watching. NFC Championship contender. This is a prove-it game. Now, if you lose this, you're still in great shape. You're still 3-1 in a division that everybody's 1-2. So you still got a head start on them. But if you want to be taken more seriously, you got to go in. You got to win this game on Monday night. And we'll see. Last thing before we rank our running backs, we got to talk about the Dallas Cowboys. And not that their team looks like shit, because we all know that. We got to talk about their upcoming schedule. Going into this week, we obviously knew that the Ravens was going to be a tough game. And it was. They got worked. Bury it, move on. But what we didn't see was the Giants working the Browns in Cleveland. Malik Neighbors looks like prime Odell Beckham on New York. And this defense looks pretty legit on the Giants side of the ball. Daniel Jones starting to play a little better. Cowboys slipping in New York on Thursday night. Rival game. Always play them tough. This might be a tough game. In Dallas, you're 1-2. You cannot drop this game, which we thought was going to be easy. Probably not so much anymore, because you know what your next slate of games is? If you lose this game, even if you win this game, 2-2 or 1-3, you got to play the Steelers next week on Sunday night. Then you got to play the Lions. Then you got to play the Niners. Then you got to play the Falcons. Then you got to play the Eagles. Then you got to play the Texans. And then you got to play the Commanders, which at the beginning of the year, we're like, yeah, that's a win. They just went in on Monday night and beat the hell out of the Bengals. If you don't, I don't think there's anybody right now that feels confident that the Cowboys could beat the Steelers, the Lions, the Niners, Falcons, Cowboys, Texans. Maybe you win one of those games the way you're playing right now. Probably 0. And if you drop this game, going 2-2, you already set up yourself for tough sledding. Now even more so, that the Commanders, our players, the Eagles, they have most talent out of any team in the league. And you guys are in shambles. Micah's pissed off at the defense. Dak and CD are arguing like, a tired married couple. Jerry can't get out of his own way. Says we're going all in. And then watches Derrick Henry run all over them in his own house. And he could have got them, but he didn't even call. The weakest part of your team last year was the run game. And you had a chance to get a Hall of Fame running back. Who gives a shit that he's 30 years old? This guy's proven that he's some sort of Olympic god and does not age and only gets stronger as the game goes on, and would have added a physical dimension to your team that you haven't had since Jimmy Johnson. But nope, we didn't even call him, even though he works out and lives in Texas, right next to your stadium in the offseason. And then you play the team that did sign him, and he ran for $150 on you and stiff-armed one of your guys into retirement, probably. I don't know if this team is ever going to be taken seriously until Jerry gives up the reins. And you can't really blame Jerry. It's tough. If I owned the team, I'd want to be involved too. But that's why you got to hire people you trust to do the process right. That's why Bill Parcells didn't like it there. He's like, you don't want to let me do what I know how to do, win Super Bowls? I can't coach here. And I like Jerry Jones. I like the Cowboys. But they and Notre Dame are the two most overhyped teams in all of sports. And every year they consistently let us down. I mean, at least the Cowboys make it to the playoffs and win 12 games. past 3 years, Notre Dame can't do shit. But the Buccaneers, I don't know. Or, excuse me, wow, the Cowboys, I was looking, they play the Bucks as well later. Week 13, 3 days before Christmas. That ought to be a good game. Side note. Tough sledding for the boys. And who knows, maybe they come out and prove us wrong. Maybe last week was a get-right game. They said enough is enough. You've seen it with teams before. But the Cowboys don't seem like that team over the past few years. They tend to crumble in big moments. This is probably the biggest moment they've had over the past few years. 1-2 facing a gauntlet. Jerry's old. Dak just got money. CD got money. Micah needs money. Lawrence is getting older. No running game. No other weapons. Mike McCarthy, no new contract. This is a big-ass moment. We're going to find a lot about him tomorrow night. They come out and they whoop the Giants, you feel a lot better. If it's a close game, you're like, this team's screwed. And if they lose, we don't even got to talk about them anymore. All right. Finally, last but not least, we are going to rank our top 5 running backs of the 2025 NFL season throughout week 3. This is only with a slight amount of bias from previous years factored in. Mostly we're going off of how they look this year on a complete package. So we're going to start off at number 5. Indianapolis Colts running back Jonathan Taylor. I've mentioned him in videos before. He gets slept on. One of the better running backs in the league coming into the year. And he's put up back-to-back 100-yard games, one with only 12 carries. And he's playing on a team that's pretty one-dimensional. And that has been trailing a lot of the time. So, Jonathan Taylor looking really strong so far this year. Just signed a new contract last year. Indianapolis needs to feed him more because this team wins when he gets the rock. Him and Richardson, they shouldn't even pass the ball. Just read option every play. 200 yards rushing, easy. Moving on, number 4. We got Alvin Kamara, which this is the biggest surprise of the running back season so far. Alvin Kamara, it feels like he's 37 years. Like, it feels like he's older than Derrick Henry. But he's 2 years younger. This guy, week 2 against the Cowboys, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm having prime Alvin Kamara flashbacks who, when Drew Brees was right on that team and Alvin had just got into the league, oh my gosh, this guy was so fun to watch. It looked like he was just jogging. And guys are sprinting, they can't catch him. And he has the best contact balance that I have seen. And he's great out of the backfield as well. And he's looked really good this year. Which, as a Saints fan, is just, something that you knew you needed, but you didn't think you were going to get. He's coming in at number 4. Number 3, a player that needs to get more touches before the whole world crumbles, Bijan Robinson. This guy got drafted 7th overall out of Texas. And when you watch him, you're like, oh my gosh, this running back is so good. He's so fast. His one-cut ability to find a hole, plant his foot, and dart uphill or, downfield is unmatched. And he's a pure running back. I mean, he can catch, but he's a pure in-between the tackles running back. And I don't know why he doesn't get 25 carries a game. He has a frame for it. It's not like he's a small guy. He's easily plus 200. When you watch him, it looks pretty effortless for him. Behind on the Falcons' offensive line, that's pretty damn good. Kirk Cousins feast off of play action. They need to make this a staple of their team. Because Bijan, he's got the makings of a star. That's for sure. Give him the ball more. Number 2, who else than King Henry? Derek, the stiff arm maniac Henry. Just watch a compilation of him stiff arming people. If you haven't done it, if you've watched all the big hits, best catches, best throws, biggest moments, just type in Derrick Henry stiff arms. It's like watching Fail Army for 30 minutes. It's hilarious. I mean, he humiliates guys. And he didn't have the biggest one, like the most notable one, like when he stiff-armed Josh Norman into another galaxy on his own sideline on Monday night. That was epic. But he had one where he was running away and the guy like dove at him and it looked like he palmed his head like a Nerf basketball and just shoved him to the ground. He looks good. Opening week, only got 13 carries, 46 yards, scored a touchdown. Second week, they're in this dogfight. They're still figuring out how to use him, how they want to construct their offense. They got Lamar. They got all these weapons, trying to figure out how to get Henry touches. Well, last week against the Dallas defense that they knew was weak against the run, and they ran him ragged. $150, 20-plus carries, 2 tutties. I mean, dude looked like prime Jamal Lewis back when he played on the Ravens. Just a stallion running down the field. So, he 30 years old, he still looks good as ever. And obviously, before we get to number 1, this is the obvious pick. I'm going to throw a couple honorable mentions. We all know who number 1 is, but I'm going to give you 3 names real quick that deserve a little bit of credit. Jordan Mason, Niners. He's got a Marion Barber style feel to him. Kind of like Chris Ivory, just mean runner. Don't want to tackle this guy. He's looked really good. He's been holding it down. Brock Purdy and Jordan Mason have not been the reason the Niners haven't won games. They've looked good. Next one, J.K. Dobbins, off of back-to-back years with season-ending surgeries, puts up back-to-back 130-yard games. Looks really good. Played at Ohio State against Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh was like, I need that guy. And he got that, running behind the wall that Jim Harbaugh has built in San Diego. He's looked real great. It's a great story as well. And then third, not being a homer, I swear, Ramondre Stevenson. Throw some love on his name. Alvin Kamara, shout out. He said that Ramondre is one of his favorite players to follow in the league. Loves his running style. He's got this gentle ballerina, bulldog play style. Really satisfying to watch. Only reason we have 1 win, we're competitive, and 1 loss. He's the only reason. And he'd probably be the reason we have 2 wins if we were able to give him the ball on Thursday night. So, shout out those 3 guys. They've looked really good this season. And then without further ado, number 1 running back of the year so far, Saquon Barkley. It's easy. Everybody's talking about Sam Darnold is the MVP through 3 weeks. I think it's obviously Saquon Barkley. 3 touchdowns in the first game. Over 100 total yards the second game. And then 160 rushing yards against the Saints. And really the only reason they won that game, granted he was the reason they lost the second one, busted off a 65-yard touchdown run when they couldn't get anything moving on offense. We knew he was going to look good behind this offensive line. We didn't know he was going to look rookie year in year 3 good. He's been awesome. And he's the best running back, can do it all. Say quads. Dude is a anomaly. And just give him the ball more. This is kind of going back to the Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. Why you don't try to get cute? You have both these teams have some of the better offensive lines in the NFL. Just run the ball. Hurts and Saquon. Thunder and lightning. Same with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. Except all four of these guys can run fast and truck you and juke you. And two of them can throw it. I think we're going to start seeing teams run the ball a lot more. Because as Mel Kiper suggested, teams can't throw nowadays. Cover two. They're just playing it so well that the passing game is a little slow to start, which is expected at the beginning of the year, but that's opening up lanes in the running game. Plus, there's not a lot of run-stuffing defensive linemen coming out of college. So, I think you're going to see teams start shifting back to that, building off of play action, easy layups. I mean, it's like fast break layups. When you've been running the ball good and you sell a play action fake, easy money over the middle of the field, 20 yards each time. So, those are my top 5 running backs. That's how I feel this week. Excited. Cowboys, Giants tomorrow. Looking forward to Malik Neighbors dicing up the Cowboys. We'll see how they answer. My cousin Robbie is a huge Giants fan, so, hopefully they get the dub. I want them to win, but I also want them to lose because I want Bill Belichick to go there, which would be just freaking awesome. Maybe, take Daniel Jones for one more year, draft Arch Manning. All right, I'm getting a little bit crazy now, but, a lot of football fans live in, hypothetical land. It's fun there, especially when your team sucks like the Patriots. Anyways, we'll be back on to react to the Cowboys and Giants game. Guys, stay safe. Have a great Wednesday night and Thursday. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace out.